Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tuesday, time for our weekly Q&A, and it's going to be about a really important issue today, voter registration and understanding the ballot issues that you can vote on. Without further ado, I want to introduce Ann. I feel like most of you have probably met before, but Ann, if you could do a quick introduction and tell everybody about your role at the St. Louis Arc.
I'm glad to be here today. My name is Ann Mangelsdorf. My title is Assistant Director of Family Support and Advocacy. And in my role as an advocacy professional and a advocate, one of the things I'm particularly interested in is voting and people's rights, particularly as it relates to disabilities.
I feel like we have been hearing so much about voting rights lately because there's a lot of things happening in the legislature where people feel like their access to their vote might be challenged. And we're going to get into that in a minute. But before we do that, I do want to just kind of generally say, why do you think it's important for people with disabilities and the people that support them to really engage in the voting process and understand the impact of these ballot initiatives and laws on their lives?
I believe that, first of all, it is a fundamental right for people to be allowed to vote. And for many years, people have had to fight to get that right. And in some cases, they've had to risk their life and limb in order to vote. So I think it's a very important right that we want to exercise. First of all, on behalf of all the people that came before us and made sacrifices so that we could all vote. And secondly, I think everyone's voice matters. And one way that elected officials and others in office know what our needs are, what our voice has to say, is by voting. Um, and other things as well, but voting is what we're talking about today. And you can get enough people, we found lately, especially with the presidential election and with other elections that have come up. Sometimes the outcomes can be very, very narrow. And so votes really do matter. And it's really important to use them. And because it is a right, there are certain things that go with that right, which is you do have the ability to vote, even if someone is telling you that you do not. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that might interfere with your ability to vote.
Great. I've been in this field for a really long time, and I can't tell you how many times I've been told that legislators, politicians know that the disability community, their voice isn't heard. And so they're not as responsive to us because they're responding to other constituents that might be louder or have a more organized message. But I feel like in the last 5 to 10 years, we've really turned that around quite a bit by getting people with disabilities to be more informed, to register to vote, and to really be present with their legislators. Are you seeing that too?
I am seeing an increase, and I think it's really important that legislators know that people with disabilities are out there and have opinions and thoughts, so that they realize, oh, this is a constituency that maybe I haven't always focused on, that maybe I need to start paying attention to.
What you could tell people who maybe think, oh, there's no reason for me to vote, my vote won't make a difference. What do you consider to be some of the biggest legislative victories that our community has had in the last 10 to 20 years?
I think one of the most significant pieces of legislation that has come up is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which has been around for quite a while, but it took a long time to get that passed, and it took a lot of advocates with and without disabilities to make that legislation happen. And I think as a result of that, it is really a disability bill of rights. It tells people that we cannot be discriminated against because of disability in employment, in hiring practices in specifically with buildings and having accessible buildings, transportation, and all kinds of other things that have come up. So I think that's been a major piece of legislation. One of the things that's come up most recently has been Medicaid expansion, which does impact certain people with disabilities who are employed and maybe originally didn't weren't eligible for Medicaid, but now are because the income guidelines have gone up. In addition to that, a number of people who work with folks who have disabilities or people who are older or people with other kinds of conditions that need a staff person with them. Oftentimes they haven't been able to afford insurance either, and so now they will be eligible for Medicaid. And that happened as the result of a ballot initiative which was put on the ballot and the voters approved. And I was talking earlier with Sharon about the fact that not every state allows ballot initiatives. There are only 24 states out of all that do, and Missouri is one of them. And so this ballot initiative made its way onto being voted on by the people. And so now the legislature is very interested in not moving that piece of legislation forward that the people voted on. So this is an example where legislation changed as the result of the people and not the state legislature. So it is a very powerful thing when we get to vote on a ballot initiative. It's one way where our voice is actually really heard. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is click on elections and voting. And look at all these choices you have. So the first thing you can do is register to vote. So do you need to register to vote? That's one of the things we can find out. So try for voters. Click on for voters.
So I can check my voter registration right here. And here's the register to vote link.
Yes. So you can actually go in to see if you're registered to vote. Right. Look at
Oh,
that.
nobody with the
There.
address did not match.
I don't live there anymore. So it's going to say that I need to either update my registration or try again with a different address or something like that. So that's because that's my old address. If I type in my new address, it's going to pull up some things that are going to allow you to look at the ballot. In the meantime, you can do your application online by clicking the buttons as Sharon is doing. You have to be a United States citizen, a Missouri resident if you're going to vote in Missouri, and you have to be 17 and a half. And you have to be 18 before election day. And then you can use a computer or a tablet to click. Click your county. And there is a voter registration application that you can fill out online or you can print, fill out, and mail.
So, Anne, if I needed some help with this, is there somebody that could help me fill out an application?
So if you are someone with a disability and you would like some help filling out your application, you are welcome to call me or email me. And I'm Ann Mangelsdorf at the St. Louis Arc, and I can help you with that process. The other thing you can do is you may have a friend or a family member that would be willing to help you with that process. Let's look at what to bring to the polls. Acceptable forms of voter ID. Right now in Missouri, you do have to have identification in order to vote. And yes, there are sample forms. So there's a bunch of things that you can do. I have a yellow voter identification card, which doesn't have anything on it except my address, which you can use. You can use a Missouri ID. You can use a college ID. You can use a utility bill with your name on it that has your address as well. And then you can vote absentee. You can vote in person. There's electronic voting machines you can use, or you can do a paper ballot. If you aren't able to get inside the building because of stairs or other things, you can actually vote from curb. So you can be in your car, drive up, and somebody can bring you out the ballot. You can fill it out and have it come back. You can also have someone with you in the voting booth if you need help with reading your ballot. They can't tell you how to vote, but they can certainly help you with the ballot.
Can you
So,
talk a little bit about absentee voting?
yes, if you have a permanent disability, you can vote absentee by filling out a absentee ballot. And they have to be sent to the the county election official board where you reside. So in St. Louis County, there's a place, and great. So you can look at the different locations. You can look at the city, the county, wherever. You can see this one is in St. Anne, the one in St. Louis City, maybe to do and see what that looks like. There you go. So that's right downtown. So the election authority, you can also go to their website. They have a website down below so that you can figure out directions. You can make a phone call. You can figure out all those kinds of things for permanent absentee ballot.
Do they still have sample ballots?
They do. So when it gets closer to the election, you should be able to go to the find your voter registration. And then from there, you should be able to, on the Secretary of State's website, you should be able to look up your voter registration and then your location for where your closest location for voting, and then what the sample ballot looks like. So what's on it. That gives you time to do a little homework and become more familiar. There are a number of great websites out there that can help you with easy ballot language and things like that. But for the purposes of registering to vote, figuring out where to vote, figuring out what ID you need, what's going to be on the ballot, all those types of
It's a
things.
good one-stop shop.
It really is.
And I like their website. It's easy to remember, sos.mo.gov. So it's a very easy one to remember, Secretary of State, SOS. So everybody, you guys should have that. You can go and check it anytime. Anne mentioned easy read ballots, which in all honesty, I like to review before I vote because it takes a lot of the legalese out of the language and presents things in really simple ways. And I think that since we've got more advocates taking charge of their own decision making, we're seeing more effort to help people with disabilities vote. One of the organizations that I really like provides some toolkits is the Autism Self-Advocate Network, ASAN, and they have a voter toolkit that includes lots of things. Anne, is there another one that you turn to?
I like ASAN. I do like the SOS website. I think the Governor's Council on Disabilities is a really good website. Not only do they have information, but they have videos that you can watch. They have written information and very step by step ways to get involved legislatively, even more than just voting. So the Governor's Council on Disabilities is one I like.
Oh,
And
so let's go into some specifics. We had some advanced questions submitted. One was, what happens when somebody tries to stop you from voting? When you've got when there's some kind of voter disenfranchisement happening, where maybe you feel like somebody's put up a barrier or is stopping you from exercising your right. What are some options for people?
one option is the Missouri Protection and Advocacy Organization has been doing more work on voter access. And so Missouri Protection and Advocacy would be a place to call. They are a statewide organization, but typically on voting days, they have some local staff available, troubleshoot. And if you go to that website, they'll have information that can help you with the voting restrictions that you might face.
And I think depending upon what kind of restriction you have, maybe you have a family member who doesn't think you should be voting, or if there's some conflict between you and somebody else, having some conversations about your right to decision making, getting some support by coming to some ARC of activities around learning about how to make good decisions and bringing your family members so they can see how that all plays out. Those might be things that might be helpful because you do have the right to vote unless it has been removed. And I want to talk about this. Somebody asked us about whether a person with an appointed guardian can still vote. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, Anne?
Yeah, so some people at the time of guardianship carve out that right to be able to vote in spite of the fact that they do have guardianship. Otherwise, guardianship restricts your ability to vote. The other way that that can be addressed is once you lose that right, if that's a right you would like to get back, you can write a letter to the court asking that you have that right reinstated. And that's something that your guardian can help with helping write that letter. Another advocate or friend can help you write that letter. But basically, it is a way to get that voting right back.
Yeah, and that process is pretty simple. We've got another Q&A from the probate court judges who came and talked to us about how to make that happen. You can just write on a piece of paper that you feel like you have competency to vote and you'd like them to reevaluate it, and they'll do that. What are some things they can be doing right now?
They can figure out who their legislators are, and they can make an appointment with them to talk to them on the phone, on Zoom, in person, or when they are back in the home district. And their home district, they typically live somewhere near you. So you could schedule a safe coffee or something like that where you could meet with them.
And it's always fun to talk about advocacy and voting. I'm glad you're here. Get out and vote. Register, everybody.